of with you, but I don't know enough about the player to bash him. All right, let's get to John McMullen here, who's joining me now on Andrew Mukuba. Johnny Mac, you got me, brother?
Yeah, you got me?
Yeah, I got you. I'll keep it quick, John. I know you got to go for the presser, but your thoughts, man. Andrew Mukuba, safeties, 5'11", 186, pretty small dude, but your initial reaction to the Eagles taking Andrew Mukuba here in the second round.
Yeah, that's my first impression. Obviously, safety was in defensive backfield as a whole. We've talked about it pretty consistently. They need to repopulate a little bit at that, both at cornerback and safety. I do think it was interesting. If you notice, he was announced as a defensive back, very undersized if you're playing him at safety. So he could be a potential nickel player as well. He played that in college, went to Clemson and Texas. So that could be the long term. And we'll get to talk to Howie a little bit later and try to figure out what he sees of the player. But certainly that when they announced him as a defensive back and instead of a safety, I immediately thought slot, nickel, that type of thing, and have the versatility to play safety in a pinch. But I'm not sure he could hold up full time at safety just because of the lack of size.
Right.
Very undersized. And if you look at some of the safeties that were on the board, specifically Xavier Watts, Kevin, the kid from Penn State, I forget his name right now. But, you know, he probably would have been difficult because he's coming off a torn ACL. And we were sort of debating that and here at the NovaCare complex. And I said, it's really difficult to draft a guy who's injured and then draft another guy that's injured. So maybe that kind of scared the Eagles off that direction. You know, some players, Shamar Turner, went right before, and that was a player I think maybe the Eagles would have had some interest in, Shamar Turner. But, you know, good player, a little bit undersized. And as you get, you know, the Eagles stayed put, very last pick of the second round. So, you know, obviously you're not going to get as high level as you go down the draft board. So interesting fit. I think he helps repopulate the defensive backfield. Good player. I wouldn't say, you know, home run pick, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm surprised they went this route. I mean, I thought they were going to go with the Winston kid from Penn State or, as you mentioned, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. But, John, what do you think this means for the guys who are on the roster? Does this mean Sidney Brown's not starting? I mean, I know you kind of said he might be a slot guy. He's a versatile player. He is very undersized. How do you project this shaking up the defensive depth chart?
Yeah, I don't, you know, we'll see. But I did pay special notice to that announcement because the Eagles are usually pretty, you know, that's by design. They're not just saying defensive back by, you know, if they thought he was a safety, I think they would have announced him as a safety. So I think that indicates this is more of a backup player that can play multiple positions. So if you think about Avonte Maddox, his ability to play the slot, the dime, and safety if need be. I don't think it's about pushing Sidney Brown at safety, but we'll see what Howie says when we get to talk to him later in the night. I just think he's probably too undersized to play.
I mean, second round pick on that, John? Why does that feel so egregious to me as you explain it?
Well, I don't think it's egregious from the standpoint that there's value in, you know, backup players. And this is, you know, immediacy. I'm talking about as a rookie.
Right.
You know, having the 64th player in the draft be a starter day one. Obviously, it's possible. Anything's possible. But I just see some physical limitations there to be a starting safety. So obviously, he's not going to be a starting slot. So to me, he's going to be a backup player, at least early in his career. That doesn't mean he can develop. But I mean, the first thing that stands out to you is he's tremendously undersized to play safety full time. And, you know, they announced him as a defensive back, and I assume that's by design.
We'll see what happens with him, Johnny Mac. Thanks for checking in, brother. I know you got to run for the press conference. We appreciate you checking in. We'll talk to you after the 3rd round pick coming up here tonight and after Howie speaks later on. Johnny Mac, thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Ender.
All right, there's Johnny Mac checking in here on the JAKIB Draft Special. Now I got also my main man checking in right after Johnny Mac. So we go from the legendary John McMullen at JF McMullen on Twitter. Give him a follow. To the legendary Big Sills rocking his Morgan & Morgan lid. What's going on, Big Sills? Andrew Mukuba has landed, brother.
Yeah, I got to think that this guy's going to be a starter. You don't draft a second rounder to be a backup. Second rounders are all starters on this Philadelphia Eagle football team. I mean, look at the guys that you guys have drafted. Look at the multiple guys that are starting on your current roster right now.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not something that they're sitting there going, hey, you know what? We'll add this guy to our roster here. You do that with 5th and 6th and 7th round guys.
Yeah.
You don't do that with second round guys. And again, just a little bit on the kid. John's right. 5'11", 186. I get it, but exceptionally talented. And do you understand, folks? What is the only reason that this kid went in the second